Hi everyone, it's Jeanette here from the Sewing Studio. Welcome to another tutorial, which today is, I'm going to stop saying this, but I'm not actually for the minute, one of my favourite blocks, and it really is, because this is probably the block that I've made the most of in terms of turning into quilts, more than any other sort of style, and that is the traditional log cabin. I've made it in different sizes, different colours, different settings over the years, and I absolutely, it really is one of my top favourites. If I had to pick a block as a top 5, that would definitely be in it. So I've used these lovely red and white fabrics, and it's red and white gatherings from Primitive Gatherings. And I decided to do this at 1.5 inch strips. So a honey bun like this, and you can sort of see all the beautiful reds there. And then there's quite a lot of lights in there. Absolutely perfect for making these, and it makes the cutting really simple because they're already cut to length, so it really speeds this block up when you use a pre-cut. But for this size block, which finishes at 7 inches, so it's a 7.5 inch unfinished, you could also use a layer cake. The longest strip we need to get from this would be a 7.5 inch cut, so a layer cake would definitely work as well. So you can see. And what I just wanted to point out when I was working with this that I really liked is you have this sort of really dark red in there, and then you have like a lighter red. Sometimes when you just do a 2-colour quilt, sometimes the colour can look a little bit flat, but by just having those 2 slightly different tones of the red in there, it just adds a bit more depth to the quilt. So let me just bring that block in back there so you can see I've used the lighter red there, and that's sort of more of a burgundy red there. And as I said, it just stops the quilt block from looking too flat. So let's just turn that around, put those over there. So as I said, red and white gatherings from Primitive Gatherings. Love this fabric. I think they did a blue and white version a while back, which would also be fabulous. We're working with red today. Now, lots of different ways to make log cabin blocks. I am definitely one where I trim my pieces to size before I start. If that's not your preferred method, if you prefer to just add strips and cut them to size as you go, that's absolutely fine. So I'm going to show you the method I make mine, and the reason I make it the way I make mine is because I find the blocks come out really accurately. Because one of the things which can happen with a log cabin block is that the blocks can become distorted. So I find by having my strips cut to length to begin with, it keeps me square, it keeps me straight, and also I almost immediately see if I'm sewing a wrong piece on there. That isn't a 100% guarantee, because sometimes pieces do fit on the wrong place, but generally speaking, you know if you've got the right piece. So I've already pre-cut these, and I'll just sort of show you my other sort of strips that I've got, that I've been working with, and I actually pulled out this fabric. Now I did toy with the idea of adding black into this, because there are some blacks in particularly some of the darker reds in there. And I was thinking that would give it a much more dramatic look to add just like a black centre. So I auditioned it with black, but I also auditioned it with this fabric here. And in the end, I decided to go for a sort of a bit of a softer look rather than the dramatic look. But let's say that's just sort of designer's choice, really. So I chose this little fabric that's got these little very tiny dots and a sort of slightly bigger dot on it. And you'll just need, I've made 16 blocks, you will just need 1 strip will be plenty to do all the centres for there. But actually, if we have a look at that fabric again, sometimes, yes, sometimes you get more than 1 strip, and I thought this one might have had more than 1 strip in it, so that you've got 2 strips to work with for your centre blocks in that particular honey bun. So I'm going to put this under, because this is absolutely what I do. I make myself a little cutting diagram for my lengths of strips, and this is one that I've written out neatly for you. But I will have one of these, and sometimes it's a little bit more scribbled, but I have one of these when I'm cutting my log cabin strips, and I keep it on my cutting table so that I can refer to it. So this is my sort of cheat sheet, if you like. And I've just literally just put the sizes in. So centre square, 1.5 inches, and then I started with lights. They're probably in this, there's probably slightly more lights than darks. I'm not sure, maybe roughly the same. Not quite sure, but anyway, it doesn't matter which you start with, but I tend to start with the fabric I've got less of, because these are shorter cuts, you need less strips for these, whichever colour you start with. So I sort of work with 1 fabric at a time. So I cut all my lights, and then when I've cut all the lights, I cut all the darks. I used to sort of cut them as whole blocks, so, you know, enough lights for 1 block, enough darks for 1 block. But what I found I started to do was sometimes start cutting the wrong things for the wrong sizes. So I'd be using light measurements and cutting the dark strips with it, and vice versa. So now I've got into the habit of cutting all my lights first. And what I do is I just put them into little strip sets, just like that. And then I'll go and cut all my darks, and then I'll clip them together as a set. Have I got a clip here? Clip them together as a set, and then I'll leave that next to my sewing machine. So I'll cut, I don't know, 10, 12 blocks, 8 blocks, however much time I've got. And I'll leave them like that next to my sewing machine, which means any time I've got spare 10 minutes, maybe 30 minutes while my dinner's cooking, I can sit down and I can sew together some blocks. So that's how I tend to work when I'm doing these. And once you've got them cut, it comes together really well. So I'll leave that there. Let's take that to the sewing machine and let's start putting it together. Now I will just begin to lay out. Now just one thing to watch before we go to the sewing machine is I started with light, so I am going in a clockwise direction. Now it doesn't matter which way you go, but just make sure that for all your blocks you're working in the same direction all the time. So some people prefer to work clockwise, some people prefer to work anti-clockwise. It doesn't matter, but like I say, but just keep going in the same direction for all your blocks. So your block is actually going to lay out like this. I'm going to have to pick all this up again in a minute. And then it will be shorter strip there and larger strip there. So we're going to start by putting those two pieces together. So we're using 1/4 inch seam, and it's important to be accurate with our 1/4 inch seams for this, or be consistent. It's probably more important, consistency, so everything fits together. So the first light round, we've just got a 1.5 inch 1.5 inch square. Now at home, I'm just going to take that off. I would probably have 2 blocks on the go. I don't tend to work with 2, possibly 3 at the most, so I can sort of leave one under the needle and then be adding the strip to the next one. But I find if you try to work too far ahead of yourself, you can get a little bit confused. So for the moment, I'm just going to finger press that to the side, and then the next light coloured strip for me, because I'm going clockwise, needs to go underneath. And you can see, so that those were 2 1.5 inch squares. This now is a 2.5 inch piece, and it should fit perfectly because we've sewn our accurate 1/4 inch. I'm just going to make sure that seam doesn't flip. Now these blocks come together really quickly. I think I timed myself, which is a little bit sad, but I was just a bit interested. And then we can pick out our first dark coloured fabric, which is also 2.5 inches. And that should now, we're working around our block clockwise, so that goes here. So that should also, now I'm just going to sew it that way so I can just make sure that seam doesn't flip. And each time I'm pressing the seam away from the centre square, and I'm only finger pressing. I don't press properly until I've put all of the block together. So the next strip goes here. Because that also alleviates distorting the block. The more times you sort of put the heat and move the fabric under the iron, the more likely it is. And I'm just going to sew that one again from this side so I can see what the seams are doing. Yeah, the more likely it is to distort your blocks. So that piece was a 3.5 inch piece. And we're going to press away again, turn our block. So the next strip we're going to sew on here, and you can see because we've got 2 seams But also we started with a short light, so we now want our shorter light for our round 2, which is also a 3.5 inch piece. So let's put it on there. Let's just trim that thread away because it's a little bit annoying. And then we can press that one. And now I won't sew the whole block, but I will just go round one more round, I think, so you can get the idea. I'm going to turn it over. Saying that maybe we should, because it's pretty quick, maybe we should do it all. Turn the block. Right, we've just got 2 pieces left. And that's the block done. So we now need to take that to the iron and give it a press. Okay, so there's our block all sewn. Now I tend to press it from the back first, and you can see all my seams are going away from that centre square. And everything lies nice and flat. So I do it, press it from the back, and then I turn it over, and I just give it a press from the front, just making sure that everything stayed square. But you can see there how nicely everything fitted together, because we'd cut it all to size and we'd sewn with our accurate 1/4 inch. So I thought, now we've made that block, I've made some others over here, and I thought what we could do was show you some little layouts. There's lots of layouts. Let me just move that a little bit out of the way. I don't think it will be in the way. So as soon as you get to 16 blocks, it's quite versatile, the different layouts we can do. So I think I'll probably show you about 5. So we're going to start, and this is just the traditional setting, and this is where you just have all the blocks in the same orientation. Let's just move that one out of the way. Actually, no, let's bring it in. Let's make it a star of the show. Let's put that one aside, only because it looks quite similar. So this is just the traditional setting. Oh, I can't pick them up. Bring them here, Jeanette. Why are you making hard work for yourself? Oh. No, actually they move. Just need to scoot up just a little bit so I can get it all on. So here's our 16 all laid out, just in the traditional log cabin setting, which looks really effective. And then we're going to do something. We're going to turn these blocks in, and that one in, and that one in. Do the same here. Oh no, that one's okay. Let's turn that one in. Turn that one in. And you can see the pattern that's beginning to form. This is what I love about patchwork, where you get to turn the blocks and see the different patterns emerge. So this is a setting called Sunshine and Shadows. And you can see here you've got these areas of light that all come together, and then your areas of dark which come together. And then we're going to do, what should we do next? Let's do our star block. So Jeanette, think about this. Let's turn this in. This is where I'm, no, that's right and that's right, that's right and that's right. That needs to go like that. That needs to go like that. And that one needs to go like that. So you can see you start to get this sort of star shape appearing. And then there's another one called barn raising. So we'll keep that in the centre and we'll turn these like that, like that. Yep, I thought I was doing that wrong then, but I'm okay. Like that. That needs to start going that way. That goes in. That goes around. Sorry, talking to myself. Yep, but stand back. Make sure I can see the pattern. It's a bit hard when you're right on top of it. A bit harder. And then, what block isn't right? That one's not right. Yeah, that's better. And that. So the barn raising, where you have these sort of diamond shapes. And you can either do that so you have the dark in the centre with the light going round, or you could have the light in the centre and the dark going round. And then one of my other favourites, which we've started to get the pattern here for, which is called Fields and Furrows. So let's just, you've got to go that way. You're then going like that. You're wrong. You go like that. You go like that. You go like that. So I'm doing a lot of talking to myself here. Almost there, almost there. Two more. That one. That one. And that one. So fields and furrows, where you have these nice diagonal lines going across. So that's 5 simple layouts that you can do with 16 log cabin blocks. Now, while we're on fields and furrows, there's a reason I finished with that one, because if you remember a while back, I was doing some scrappy curvy log cabin blocks. And I actually did the layout called Fields and Furrows with the curvy log cabin blocks. So I'm just going to sort of set that on there. Now, it's a little bit harder to see on this one because the fabrics, there's not so much of a contrast, they're much more muted. But if you have a look at the curved log cabin, let me just put it on top, and don't know how well that's in shot. But if you have a look at this one, what you can see with the curved log cabin is these strips are wider and the light strips are much narrower. So if we just peel that back and have a look at these are the same size, but on the curvy log cabin, they're a little bit different. But you can do all those layouts I just did with all of those blocks. You could absolutely do curvy log cabin blocks with those, but like I say, I chose to do fields and furrows. I laid them out on this, and actually this was the pattern that was the strongest from the different layouts that you could sort of see the most with these particular fabrics. And it's probably because I've used, sort of quite a busy light in there. And as I said, a lot of these colours are a lot more muted. So I've done 16 of the curved log cabin blocks here. So that could definitely be the centre of a quilt now. So I've been working on those in the background. So that's the log cabin, traditional log cabin. As I said, absolutely one of my favourites. I very rarely make the same quilt twice, but I've definitely made a number of log cabin quilts over the years. And I would still make more in the future as well. Absolutely love doing them. And each one can be a little bit different as well. So I hope you enjoyed that. If you give any of these blocks a go, please do share your photos with us through social media. We love to see what you make with your log cabin blocks. And I hope you'll join me again here next time, here in the sewing studio.